Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Vice President Harris will be in Memphis, Tennessee today for the funeral of Tyree Nichols. He died a few days after a violent beating by Memphis police officers. From member station WKNO, Christopher Blank reports.
The Biden administration joined a chorus of leaders calling for police reforms after the release of videos showing Nichols' beating by police. The president invited Nichols' mother and stepfather to the upcoming State of the Union address. Vice President Kamala Harris will be at the funeral, along with Biden officials Keisha Lance Bottoms and Mitch Landrieu, both former mayors of majority black cities like Memphis. A capacity crowd of 2,500 is expected at the funeral. The Reverend Al Sharpton will give the eulogy, as other civil rights leaders call on Congress to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which President Biden has pledged to sign. For NPR News, I'm Christopher Blank in Memphis.
2 House committees will launch investigations of the Biden administration today. NPR's Deirdre Walsh reports one will be on pandemic programs and the other on border policies.
House Oversight Chairman James Comer's hearing will track spending on programs that sought to boost small businesses and stimulate the economy during the COVID pandemic.
I believe that the committee needs to get back to its primary mission, and that is to root out waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement in the federal government.
The House Judiciary Committee, led by Chair Jim Jordan, will look at how Biden administration policies are affecting the southwest border. Witnesses include local officials from Texas and Arizona and a parent of a 15-year-old who died of a fentanyl overdose. Democrats agree oversight is a key congressional responsibility, but argue that Republicans are selectively investigating Biden after ignoring concerns about Trump's policies. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, Washington.
Some economists believe the Federal Reserve will be less aggressive when it announces its latest hike in interest rates this afternoon. Steve Beckner has more.
After raising the federal funds rate 0.75 of a point 4 straight times, the Fed raised that key short-term rate a half point in December. With inflation lessening and the economy slowing, Fed watchers and some officials call for a quarter-point move. That would leave open the question of how much higher rates might go eventually.
Steve Beckner reporting. The National Weather Service says a significant ice storm is blanketing much of the South. Ice storm warnings are up from near the southern Texas border to Tennessee. Dangerously icy conditions have caused hundreds of traffic accidents, and the ice is weighing down power lines, causing tens of thousands of outages. The site, poweroutage.us, says more than 180,000 customers are out of service in Texas alone. The tracking site, FlightAware, says well over 7,000 flights have already been delayed today. This is NPR News. The U.S. says Russia is failing to keep the terms of the new START nuclear arms treaty. The Biden administration says Russia won't allow U.S. inspectors on its territory as the treaty specifies. Both the U.S. and Russia were to hold talks last November about resuming inspections, but Russia called them off, and no new date for consultations has been set. Officials in Western Australia say they have located a tiny radioactive capsule that was lost in the outback more than 2 weeks ago. The capsule fell off of a truck. Searchers have been scouring a highway that is longer than the distance between Los Angeles and Albuquerque, New Mexico. The BBC's Phil Mercer reports from Sydney the capsule is smaller than a postage stamp.
A very hazardous needle has been found in a big haystack in Western Australia. The radioactive capsule fell off a lorry somewhere on a 1,400-kilometre stretch of Western Australia's Great Northern Highway. It was recovered by nuclear specialists and emergency services personnel near the town of Newman, north of Perth. Government officials say its discovery is an extraordinary result. Experts had warned that anyone handling the missing capsule was at risk of burns or radiation sickness.
The BBC's Phil Mercer reporting. The Dallas Zoo says 2 of its monkeys that were taken this week have turned up in an abandoned house not far away. They're safe, but the mystery is growing. There have been cut fences at the zoo, a leopard briefly escaped, and an endangered bird died of a strange wound. It's NPR.
On the podcast, Rough Translation, a young doctor gets a request from Ukraine.
They're urgently looking for abortion pills.
But delivering the pills means skirting the law.
We weren't really sure who to trust.
A wartime mission in a legal gray zone. That's on the NPR podcast, Rough Translation.